So, what does 2020 and invisible flying reindeer have in common? Well, first of all, believers in invisible flying reindeer are mentally unstable people who should not be allowed in society and should be drugged heavily and locked away. Maybe the same should go for people who have the other mental condition that we can't talk about right now. But you know, there's a lot more going on. See, the people who try to convince you invisible flying reindeer exists and celebrate invisible flying reindeer are a specific population. There's the host who controlled the humans' minds, who spread the invisible reindeer propaganda, just like they spread the 2020 propaganda. And then there's like kind of like non-player characters in the game who can't think for themselves, so they believe in invisible flying reindeer, and then they also believe in 2020. And then there's another population who is in the game as NPC, who is here to rebel and turn against, invisible flying reindeer, against Yahweh's wishes to not celebrate invisible flying reindeer. But at the same time, there could be some controlled opposition there, because if you believe in one invisible flying reindeer and not the other invisible flying reindeer, you might have some problems mentally as well. But I think it donates which who's who. If you must believe in invisible flying reindeer, then you don't have 2020 vision, and that means you believe in 2020. And if you don't believe in invisible flying reindeer, then that means you have thoughts. You can think and process stuff yourself. The odd thing is the world is filled with invisible flying reindeer, apparently. And I'm the one who gets drugged by these invisible flying reindeer people. And, that's probably what 2020 is all about. Because you guys remember the video in 2019 when the invisible flying reindeer worshippers had came and scooped me up and started injecting me with drugs. Then I said everyone should get to feel what this is like. So magically 2020 rolls out, and now everyone is forced to be injected by the government. But it's like a mask, except for instead of putting on a mask to cover themselves up, they put on masks to show us. So it's a sign, like we've asked the God to show us a sign in 2020. And like I said in my first day of 2020, when this stuff began, I said, look, they're being marked. I said, look, I asked for this to happen. The people who worship the terrorist governments of the world are now marking themselves. Like, we're not going around and putting a little star on them or anything like that. We're telling them it's for their health, and they're doing it. And it's interesting how that plays out. Like, I'm not even sure, to be honest. I think the hosts don't understand what's going on in the game, because they're the ones doing it. Like, they're the ones putting on the masks on themselves. And the point of the mask is to mark people as the ones who have enslaved the rest of the world. I was just looking at the map over here and looking up who rules what. And apparently, no one with tan skin runs Brazil, or South America. Brazil, obviously. And it's like, so that nation is probably like unsafe to go to. I looked up, and supposedly like 100 years ago, Africa, 90% of it was taken over by the empire, the empire of democracy, whatever you want to call it. And then you can, like I've shown before in videos where I don't mean to do product advertising. I don't know who owns that company. I can only assume if it's popular. It's probably some of these people I'm talking about, and probably someone in South Africa or something invented it. But or USA or Australia or one of those other places where people are at that it's not their land. So I really didn't mean to put that in that video, but if you would have went outside during 2020, you would have noticed that people were turned off, like they were robots who had like literally turned off. And if you looked inside people's houses, no one was up past 10 because the TV had told them, Mommy said it's time for bedtime. And so it really 2020 vision is so much more than separating the NPC from the host from the real players in the game. And I think there's 2 to 3 more divisions within those groups, obviously. But I think that's what I took from 2020 the most, is the world was busy showing me that, hey, this is fake and it's altered. And I was like, well, like you can alter the internet, and yeah, they don't want to be talked about. They don't want this stuff to be talked about. Other than that, everyone would already know this stuff. But there's more than that, because like the literal world, the physical world, I've watched it be altered around me, and that's impossible to do unless like the controllers of the game are able to build cities that look like they're 200 years old on land that's supposedly thousands of years old, just like that, to speak. And so when I see that stuff happening, I see a whole new thing. But I'm not talking about that level. I'm talking about like the purpose of 2020 was, we asked for the gods to show the people everything on the planet and what's going on. I don't know if we did, but I did. And then the masks were used to mark people and identify them in separate ways. And then it was used to bring out aggression and hatred from the ones who were marked the most. So you could see like the different levels of what the of how like one narrative says this group is like a good group fighting for peace and against empiric enslavement of the world, and when in fact they were promoting the empire. I myself had seen some stuff too. I even got yelled at for like talking about that. I don't like getting yelled at by light-skinned people when I'm in a black. I don't even like light-skinned people talking when I'm around Black Lives Matter. But unfortunately, when I got out to the West Coast, there wasn't too many of that. It's like, it's not up to me to talk about that stuff. It's their job to talk about themselves and promote their own stuff. And hell, I got yelled at because the cops were driving by, and I was like, "You guys like notice that? You guys think that there's something weird with that?" And then I got yelled at for that, probably more than once. And then I got yelled at too for being at that event and being light skinned. And I tried to explain several times that happened. Like, well, yeah, I understand that fully. But, so I've seen a lot of other stuff that other people haven't seen. And there's a lot of stuff I see that where like I accidentally say the magic word, and that'll like the whole video is out of hand at that point. So I can't upload that stuff. Um, so yeah, I think this has been happening for a long time. But I understand that there's like different layers of control here. There's the media being erased and stuff like that, and they're trying to show me like the world is being erased, but they're also trying to deny that I am. Those with the media control are trying to deny that I'm seeing the world being invented around me as I go into areas. And if you're going to deny that, then I'm going to have to assume that there's a different level of control layer that they're on versus the actual uh, game standpoint and direction and decision. So we ask questions like, why does the creator design something where there's death and war and famine and stuff like that? And it it's like, why do we ask Nintendo why I created Ganon and Zelda or the Koopas in Mario Brothers? Like, we don't ask those questions. We're not concerned with those questions at the end of the day. But if we insert ourselves into like a real game and we want to feel real, like we would, erase our understanding of anything outside of that. Although my understanding wasn't fully erased, I don't know about others. I was born with understanding, um, kind of like a handicap, I guess it felt like. But maybe I earned that handicap. Maybe I've earned it through prestige as well, through dying, coming back, or resetting the game over and over. But obviously, it's part from the. I mean, in the other world, the rules probably don't apply. So it's probably from prestiging or choosing stats when coming into the game. But what I've seen is that we have people who have no thoughts, which I've been worried about for a minute. Um, I've been worried about that since I was like 4 years old, and the beginning of thought for me was 4 years old. So I consider 1984 my insertion into the Matrix, probably the creation date of the Matrix, technically. Although outside this world dates, outside of this planet, dates are different everywhere you go. That's scientifically proven fact that if you go outside this planet, that date and time are different. You don't even have to believe in something else. That's just fact. But so we see in 2020 that there's a layer of control here where like people believe anything and do anything. And one of the things I seen at first right away was, and I made a video on that right away. It's like by 11 a.m., people are outside running with their families. People who are normally at work were outside running with their families and playing with their families and stuff. And the confusing part of that to me was, how does everyone understand all of that stuff by 11 a.m. when they went to school for 12 years and they still can't do math or read and write very well? They definitely don't know history, which is a good thing, because if you paid attention in history class, you probably are misinformed, which means you will say you know less than a toddler, because it's a reverse aging mentally to be misinformed. But that's what I've seen. I've seen a separation between several groups. I I'm not sure if they're quite the host, but they play a similar role on the planet. To and then you have a lot of the humans who seem like non-player characters who have they don't you know they don't really have like 40 years or 80 years of experience behind them at all times. And like if you're 80 and you believe flying reindeer exist, there's almost no way that you've existed for more than a certain amount of time, because it's just not logical. It's highly illogical. Like, do you see the flying invisible reindeer in front of me? It's there, dude. Now, how do I get you to believe in the invisible flying reindeer? I will cut you down and cut your family down and tell you to worship the invisible flying reindeer, or else. And that actually goes over here to the map where we have this nation, most of this nation, the nations surrounding this nation, this nation. They all have had vicious encounters with the invisible flying reindeer crew. And apparently, I mean, the invisible flying reindeer are like a formidable force in this world. So I don't think maybe I shouldn't run my mouth too much about how they don't exist, because I mean, you never know, they might be trying to like team up and kill people who don't believe in invisible flying reindeer, like they did that landmass, that landmass, that landmass, that landmass, that, and surrounding that landmass. Apparently, they're really upset with this landmass, China, because yeah, the Muslim version of the invisible flying reindeer, they uh they don't allow that in their nation. Oh yeah, and they don't allow the official version of the invisible flying reindeer. So we, like, that's part of the propaganda to invade them. So we've surrounded their nation in order to eventually try to conquer it. Um, so, I mean, which is the same thing that happened everywhere else, right? Slowly it was surrounded and taken over. So the invisible flying reindeer in the 2020 story, the 2020 vision, like, it really helps you see things if you understand the invisible flying reindeer. And I understand some of you, the reason you believe, or say you believe, say is the reason you believe, whichever, in invisible flying reindeer, is because you have a wife or a child who, and you know, they'll hate you. They use hate, they use emotions towards you. They'll use aggression and anger towards you if you do not participate in invisible flying reindeer belief, because we all know that that's true, and that the invisible flying reindeer sitting over here is going to get upset if you do not partake in that, and he is a vicious killer. He has that bright red nose, and red means Satan, so we must believe in that. Technically, like, that's more accurate than anything, because it says in the Bible, the invisible flying reindeer crew is not to be worshipped. So, but it's on because in the name of Yahweh, they worship the invisible flying reindeer. So it makes no sense. Like, even if you want to be like, oh, well, this is just a fun little thing, and parents love enslaving and manipulating their children, and that's what invisible flying reindeer are about. Even if you want to say that, those same people will also say that it's done for Yahweh, but it says right in Yahweh's book that it is pagan. So invisible flying reindeer is supposedly paganism. Although I don't think they had invisible flying reindeer, they just had everything else that the invisible flying reindeer brings, the gifts that the invisible obese person brings us. That is part of the pagan stuff. So it doesn't really make sense when invisible obese people riding invisible flying glow in the dark reindeer are coming around dropping off gifts in the name of a religion that said we don't worship invisible obese flying people on invisible glow in the dark flying reindeer. So that doesn't make sense either. But if you don't believe in these things, it's been known since 2,000 years ago that you will get your head chopped off if you don't believe in these things. In fact, like, the Bible was written in a time where it was like, I mean, the Bible was supposedly written about a guy named Jesus who they killed because he was saying we all do not have to worship invisible flying reindeer. And that was illegal at those times. Although it's claimed that the actual government there was mad at it, and it was just the religious people wasn't mad at it, and the religious people were the ones mad that he was talking about not flying, not he's not able to find an invisible flying reindeer to fly on, And I have that problem too. This one over here gets out of hand. Every time I get near him, and he always tells me, I'm your Lord and Master, and you do not ride me, I ride you. And who am I to talk back to a invisible flying glow in the dark reindeer? I mean, do you see? He looks vicious.